anyone else think the entitlement locals have is ridiculous. I live in Maine and people are always complaining about how out-of-staters are moving here and taking homes from the locals. It kind of makes me crazy. I'm sorry, but are you descended the local tribe of Native Americans? Then your family moved here and took land and homes from people. It's just silly. You're no more entitled to a house where you grew up than the next guy from out of state. Not to mention that we need the money, youth, and intelligence from new people. My state is so backward and stagnant in a lot of ways, but people would rather see it stagnate than change. Makes me crazy. What kills me is how people move to an area and then desperately try to shut the door behind them. I'm from New England and I feel some sympathy when it's about the second home and Airbnb impact on the market. When 50 of the town is weekenders, it does change the community. Not at all. They made the towns what they are. They're desirable because of them. The out-of-staters move in and with them they usually bring in higher incomes and wealth the locals can't compete with. Now generations of locals are uprooted and can no longer afford to live in the towns they spent their entire lives helping build. Why do they have to be descendants of a local tribe? And what gave you the idea that their families took land? I can see why they resent people from OOS. Look at your attitude. Well, in this little town in SoCal that I just bought in, the locals are angry that everyone moved in and drove the prices so high that people who grew up here can no longer afford to buy here. I think that's what they're pissed about. I feel like that's everywhere. I think a lot of it comes from people getting outbid by out-of-towners with more money than them. I live right between DC and New York and our housing market has gotten crazy since the work from home push started. People are coming in with these huge cash offers that are way over asking. We have personally lost offers from this. One from someone who paid $101K over asking. But it's like any other market, he who has more money gets the prize. It really depends on the situation. My area is being flooded by people from expensive states retiring or just buying a vacation home. The problem this creates is housing costs for families. The median income for this area barely lets you afford a dank apartment now, but everywhere you look, houses are being built starting at $500,000. 10 years ago we sold a decent house for $135,000. Our current home is near $600,000 in value, and there's no way my kids are going to be able to stay here when they finish school. We've got a sub-3 mortgage on a house we owe just a fraction of its value on. But the rapid increase in housing prices is really scary. People are entitled to feel frustrated by their locality changing and by real estate prices being driven up in areas they want to live. I think it depends. I'm all for people living where they want to live, but my heart does go out to the people who can no longer afford to buy a home in their hometown. Especially when the people moving in have remote salaries that the local companies can't keep up with. No. If you grew up somewhere, or have lived decades there, and then you start to see a drastic and accelerated change, I get being frustrated. People that complain that an area changes at all or at having newcomers period, they are ridiculous. I'm all for new people moving into my area, but I really hate people that move to a new area and immediately talk about how stupid the local people are, or they immediately want to voice their opinions on changing things in the city. To me, if you move somewhere, you assimilate to that town, otherwise you need to find somewhere else you like better. Wait till you go to Hawaii and have to listen to anyone but native Hawaiians complain about tourists as if they weren't a tourist who just had enough money to become a permanent tourist. I think people are kind of entitled to move somewhere and then try to change the place that they moved to. I've always adapted to where I moved. The issue we have here is many people come from out of state and start complaining about our state. No one asked them to come here. People were happy with it as it is. It's offensive to go into someone else's home and complain that it's not the way you would want it to be. When out-of-state money comes in and prices the locals out of their ability to live. Because the local economy isn't the same. That's also a pretty valid reason to be frustrated. I think you don't understand their concerns at all. I see your argument but don't think it's fair to ignore the fact that states have unique, contemporary cultures that they want to preserve. But now that I write that, it does sound a little like some nationalist BS rolling on the floor laughing. I grew up in Maine and my mom has lived there for 50 years, but people still refer to her as from away. Having grown up around a lake that was locals only and then watching the tourists take over. It was miserable. Prices for houses went crazy. Prices for food, drinks, and other services over doubled. The quiet locals bars where you knew everyone and anything was allowed, like having dogs and smoking, are now set to cater to tourists and outsiders. I hate every part of it. And it's only like two families that are making all the money since they own all the businesses in the area. I would love to kick out anyone who is not a full-time resident, native here, and left Maine because the locals are so very unfriendly. It wasn't worth my effort. I also got tired of hearing about everyone's lineage to the rev. I don't gaff about your grandpappy. I want to know you, and are you a decent and caring human? Gorgeous state with too many a-holes and way too many ticks. It's worth a visit and that's it. Are you descended the local tribe of Native Americans? Then your family moved here and took land and homes from people. Wait till you hear what the natives did to get the land. Agreed, people should be able to move anywhere they want. But the locals have valid concerns about changes in culture, cost of living, and resource allocation if large amount of people move into the area. Nah, Mainers don't think they have a birthright to the state. It's just that we have a culture and way we do things, and people come into the place we have our community the way we want it and decide it needs to change. How about find a place that has the community you're looking for? Flatlanda. Suck it up, op. This happens everywhere and at every level. I live in PA and people get pissy when other people move from the next county over. Humans have this tings against outsiders, but I feel like most of it is that they are expected to react that way to outsiders because that makes them an insider. It makes them belong. So that's what they do. You're no more entitled, you're. Gee, hard to imagine why they don't like outsiders with an attitude like your. It's not the real estate they are complaining about, it's the lack of community outsiders bring. I live in VT and we have a pretty big problem with out-of-staters buying up rentals and throwing families out and then converting them to Airbnbs. We also have low wages here and many locals cannot compete with the mass out-of-staters on housing. Every other comment and post on our Maine is a complaint about out-of-staters or tourists. Besides some of the lake and mountain areas and up north, the populated areas of Maine are no fucking different than anywhere else in the Northeast. I spent quite a bit of time up in Maine a while back, and unless you were born there you were from away. Your people don't like when people gentrify an area. If you assimilate, it's fine. I think the problem is many transplants try to change the culture of the area instead of embracing the existing culture and working to keep it the same. Transplants who embrace the existing cultural norms are usually welcomed. Transplants who want to change the existing cultural norm of the area should look elsewhere, and gatekeeping should be enacted against them.